Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning. Parents, what if we could give you the power to transform your family into something absolutely amazing?
A family where everyone is healthy, gets along, loves Jesus, and has great purpose in life.
Hey, let us flip your thinking to unlock the power God has given you to create your own Crazy Cool family. Welcome, parents, to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast. We are doing a Zoom recording today with Chris Coursey. And Chris...
You guys are going to love him.
Yes.
You're going to love what he has to tell you. It's going to rearrange how you interact with your own self, emotions, and with your kids, and with your spouse.
Chris is up there in Michigan, and he's written about 107 books. He's written everything you can think of.
When it comes to relationships.
Yes, relationships, and joy, with the topics we love to talk about at Crazy Cool Family, connecting with your kids and how to help them and how to reach deep into their hearts and help them to love Jesus more and to be able to get back on track and all the
love
things
you
that,
more,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
You're going to tell them how to have their kids love them more, right?
Oh yeah, that's all in there.
So the main book we're going to talk about is a book called The Joy Switch. And it is a book that is it just came out this year, right?
Yes. Yep.
Fresh off the press, is that what that's called?
Yes, it is. That's right.
So welcome, Chris. So
Thank you.
if you're in your
friends.
car, guys, just start clapping.
I'm so glad to be here with you. I've been very excited about our time.
Yeah, and so Chris, let's just start out. You know, I read the Joy Switch book and just devoured it. And if you look at my Kindle, it's got all kinds of highlights. You know, because I just highlighted so many different phrases in there. But let's just start out by telling parents kind of what the Joy Switch is and get a context.
Yes. Well, thank you. So, you know what? I was very excited about the Joy Switch because it's, you know, what it is, it's really an introductory book. Our ministry focuses on training 19 skills. These are relational skills, but the Joy Switch is like what we call skill zero, which is learning to really turn on our relational brain. And so our brain, you know, God designed us fearfully and wonderfully. And we now know from interpersonal neurobiology that there is an engine on the right side of our brain. And we can call this engine, it's a relational engine, but we call it our relational circuit. And so this engine or the circuit really functions as kind of a circuit breaker. So if you plug too many things in the outlets of your home, your power might go out because you blew a fuse and you got to go flip the switch. So in a sense, we have this circuit breaker in our brain, and it comes on when we're expecting some glad to be together joy. So we can learn to recognize, is it on or is it off? And when it's on, we want to connect with our family and our friends. We're glad to be with them. We're curious what they're thinking. It's easy to feel some joy and some peace. But when this circuit breaker goes off, we kind of go into problem solving mode. So instead of focusing on relationships, we tend to focus on problems and whatever's wrong. So I kind of forget about my child for that moment, and I'm focused on the chore that he forgot to do, and I'm mad. And so my brain is now in a state, what we call enemy mode. So my son feels like my enemy at the moment because he didn't do what I asked him to do.
So would you say, Chris, that the Joy Switch is kind of an attitude?
You know, definitely impacts our attitude. So like when the circuit is on, we are able to put ourselves in our family's shoes. We have compassion. Our attitude, we might say, is good. But when the circuit goes off, like turning off the lights in your room, what happens is my brain shifts into a very non-relational state. So you'd see a bad attitude when I'm in enemy mode. I'm upset. I'm focused on what's wrong. I've lost my joy and my peace. They flew out the window. And now the people around me probably feel like roadkill a little bit because I am now focused on what you didn't do or whatever was wrong. This could be our family. This could be another driver. This could be, you know, it can be basically anyone this can happen to.
So, you know, I was thinking about that. this week. So I guess a couple days ago, I came home from work and was just frustrated with some things. Felt like a little overwhelmed. So some of the things I thought would I felt like I might need to change some directions, and so I call it, in that case, kind of being in a fog.
Yeah.
Because I came home and it just feels like that I didn't really, in reading your book, there were some things that you said that were really clear, like hard to connect with people. Feeling like when, you said don't want to make eye contact, kind of want to avoid people. Is that what you're talking about when I'm kind of switched off?
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. It does kind of feel like a fog. And so this circuit's kind of like a dimmer switch. So the lights are starting to dim on this relational circuit. So I could be in a very good mood and can't wait to see my family. And I walk in the door and something just upsets me. It could be a tone of someone's voice. It could be, the chore that wasn't finished, whatever it is. When that dimmer switch starts to fade, you can almost just feel your brain, in a sense, shutting down a little. So now I'm getting grumpy.
Wow.
I'm not glad to be with my family. If I look them in the eye, it's so they see how angry I am. I lose my curiosity. I don't feel like being kind when I'm in enemy mode. And so you can, with a little bit of practice, you can just feel like the lights going off. But the good news is, with a little practice, we can learn to recognize it and shift some gears, so to speak, so that we can return to relational mode, which in the book I call our relational sweet spot. And that's where good things grow.
Yes, that's what I wanted to bring up, is that, which was almost an anomaly to me, because you say that joy is our brain's sweet spot. Yeah. And I think that as a mom of many, I know when my kids were little, I did not walk in joy very often, because to me it felt like joy didn't get things done.
Yeah,
Anger and frustration motivated better than joy did.
Yeah.
And so that was a concept to me, that joy is our brain's sweet spot.
Yeah.
And that's where we want to be. And so moms out there, I just want you to hear that you are wired and designed to live and do joy, be joy. And so share with us a little bit about, okay, when I'm not joyful because the chore wasn't done, or the tone was set, or there's somebody, shot daggers through their eyes at me, how do I revamp that whole situation?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And, it really helps to tease out that, happy is circumstantial, joy is relational. So I'm happy when it's pizza night in our house, and, Friday night pizza night. I'm happy. I'm excited because there's pizza, there's movies, and it's a good time. But I'm joyful. Joyful is I'm glad to be with my family as we do this. So, joy is when someone walks into the room and your face lights up to see them. Your brain.
Eyes. That's the other thing.
Yes,
you said, that you see it in their eyes. Oh,
you do. In fact, the muscles of the eyes are what the joy center in your brain, the muscles of the eyes actually show the joy. So babies look at mommy's eyes more than anywhere else on mommy's face, is particularly mommy's left eye, because it's connected to the right hemisphere where the joy center lives. So more than anywhere, babies are looking at mommy's eyes to see if mommy's really glad to be with me. So we recognize when we're losing our joy because we just want to make problems or people go away. We just get to that point where we just want to disconnect. We're no longer listening to what someone's feeling or what they're saying. We're just like, we see their mouth moving, but our brain is locked onto something else. We're just focused on whatever's upsetting us, or we just don't want to be connected to the people we normally enjoy. So for me, that's a really good sign. My brain's slipping into enemy mode, because right now I'm not enjoying my kids. I'm focused on whatever's wrong, and odds are they see it and they feel it, that I'm not genuinely glad to be with them. I just want to usually get away when I'm in enemy mode, or I feel like arguing, right? Or fighting. It's where a lot of conflicts happen in families. Or I more aggressively interrogate, judge, or fix people when my brain's in enemy mode.
Right.
So here's the good news. As we recognize that, wow, I'm not feeling this glad to be together joy, we can pause and get relational. And so in the book, I kind of talk about some different options. And one of the options is just, we remember to breathe. Sometimes it's just, when we get stressed, the first thing to go is we forget to breathe. We get the shallow breathing. About 3/4 of us, when we pick up our phone, we hold our breath. So it's good. I always encourage people, notice your breathing when you pick up your phone. Are you still, are you breathing deeply from your belly, or are you like doing the shallow breath? So when we get upset, we do the shallow breathing. So I just encourage people, hey, breathe from your belly. You get more oxygen to your brain.
So, but can I stop there for just a second? Because I remember that in your book, you said that being on your phone, it's a little side note here, but I mean, being on your phone actually stresses, it was like some kind of statistic, I can't remember what it was, but stresses people out. Just the action of looking at your phone. And if your phone's right by you, you will think about it even though it's there. And so you have some, you said sometimes y'all just kind of put your phone away. Explain that a little more.
Yeah, you know what? They've done a lot of studies with phones. And in one study with college kids, they had kids who were taking their tests. They turned their phone off, they put their phone away, but their brain was still thinking about their phone, like, every so many seconds, still thinking about my phone. So as a family, it's very easy. I would sometimes pick up my phone without even thinking about it. So if it's some special family time, I will try to put my phone away from me so that I'm not picking it up. And I can remember my sons, when they were younger, would see me pick up my phone during an interaction. They'll say, "Daddy, why are you picking up your phone?"
Oh,
right. Wow, he's
babes, right?
Yeah, he called my number. So I have to be very purposeful about, just putting the phone away. Because a lot of us, basically, when we pick up our phone, our brain shifts into enemy mode, and we're just trying to fix problems. I got emails I need to take care of. I got whatever it is.
And I think that's interesting that you talk about how enemy mode is, and it goes back to what you were saying, Suzanne, about how joy should be our normal state. You even say in here, this state of being our best is known as acting like ourselves. We act like ourselves when we say and do things that align with our identity. We reflect who we're meant to be. And that's what you're talking about, being in that joy, in the on position, so to speak.
Yes.
But I think we associate getting things done with that's good, and I'm in productive mode, but yet in some ways you're calling that enemy mode. So how do we be productive? Because there are times we need to get things. I'm an achiever. I want to get things done, and that can be a good thing, because otherwise things don't get done.
Yes.
And so, but how do you not be in enemy mode while you're actually getting things done in life?
Great question, Don. And one of the things that I help people understand is when our brain shifts into enemy mode, we lose the parts of the brain that kind of hold our identity and our character. So enemy mode is just problem-solving mode. We lose creativity. I'm not as efficient as I would be in relational mode. So in enemy mode, I lose creativity. I can't think outside the box. So what I encourage people is, when you're actually in relational mode, you will be more productive, more efficient, more creative. Everything is better when your brain's working as God designed it to. But when I go into enemy mode, it's like trying to run a race with my feet tied together. I mean, I am very limited. I don't have all of my resources that God's kind of put in there. And so it's very limited. And so I encourage people, if I'm training, a family or a community, one of the first skills is learning to recognize this relational circuit. And anytime it goes off, I can predict I'm not going to handle the situation as well as I would if I was in relational mode. And now when I'm in relational mode, it doesn't mean I need to be interacting all the time. My wife and I can be reading books on the couch, and if I'm in relational mode, I still care about her, and I'm glad that she's there, but I'm actually focused on my book. But when I go into enemy mode, I might be annoyed that she's breathing too loudly. The things that bother us when we're in enemy mode, right? And so in relational mode, I'm a better version of myself. It's kind of like the Ephesians 2:10 concept, where God created us. We're his masterpiece. It's actually his poem. We're his poem. We're his poetry. But we're created for good works in Christ Jesus. So when we're being who God created us to be, the result will be good. And so in relational mode, we're going to be better reflections of who God made us to be, whether I'm working on my car, whether I'm, watching movies with my children and my family, whether I'm going for a walk, whether I'm playing with my sons, whether we're sitting on the beach. I'm a better version of myself in relational mode. I have compassion. I care about what they're thinking, what they're feeling. That goes out the window when I go into enemy mode. So it does kind of feel like, for a lot of people when they learn this, it kind of feels like, but when I'm in enemy mode, I don't have to worry about all of those things with other people. I can just get the job done. And that is kind of how it feels, right?
Amen.
Right? That is kind of how it feels. Like I could just focus on the one thing.
Get out of my way. Come on.
Yeah, let me do my job,
Yes.
right? But it helps to know in relational mode, you've actually got your whole brain working together, and you're going to have your creativity. You're going to be able to calm down when you start to get stressed out. You're going to better navigate whatever terrain you're navigating. It just takes a little bit of practice for our brain to learn that, because it learns by habits.
I'm trying to get this to, and I think it's so valuable to try to help different personality types. You got doers versus relational people. You got introverts versus extroverts.
Mary.
Exactly.
Yes.
But so help our parents and also how they see this in their kids. Because it's so similar. Our kids are just little versions of, they're little people. So what are some characteristics of when you're in on mode versus off mode? And even in the off mode, you talked about 2 off modes. One of them being shutdown mode. I'm depressed. I don't want to do anything. Or the other one might be more of a manipulative mode, where you start to try to use negative tactics to try to get what you want.
Yeah, you know what? This is really helpful. So when we think of enemy mode, we tend to think of what we call simple enemy mode, which is just when I go offline, it's clear. Like people who know me know, wow, Coursey is not online. It's clear that he's in enemy mode. I'm just saying and doing things that don't reflect my heart or my character. Maybe I'm shut down. I don't want to be around people. I don't want to talk, or I'm in high energy. I'm just reacting. So I'm just saying and doing things wow, he's really, really offline. So that's just the obvious version. Simple enemy mode. It's just, I'm just flailing about. I'm drowning. I'm taking in water. There's a smart enemy mode, which is where most of the brain on the right side is working together, except the bonding center. So what this means is I look like I care. I act like I care. I seem like a nice guy, but the whole time I'm tracking you for something that I want. So this is where we get, it's kind of a bad reputation that used car salesmen have. I know used car salesmen, they're not all like this. There's really good guys.
Or politicians.
Yeah, or politicians, exactly. We tend to think of them as in the smart enemy mode. So they seem caring. They're telling us what we want to hear. But the whole time they want our vote, they want our money, they want something from us. In the book, I give an example of when I wanted a bike. I wanted a certain bike for Christmas. And I was just, trying to do my chores ahead of time. I was I was basically trying to get what I want by being the perfect son. So.
And I remember you said it worked.
It did, actually.
Because I think that's what we do. The reason I bring that up is because sometimes it works, and so therefore we get our behavior, or
it gets reinforced.
Yes, it gets, or
that's right.
Sometimes anger gets reinforced.
Yes,
because when I look in my kid that way, and I will get the short-term benefit, and we talk to our parents a lot about that. You're getting short-term benefits, but you're going to lose in the long term because you're going to alienate that child. So, and also let's relate it to the kids. When you see, how do you look to see your kid in off mode, and then maybe, I want to go deeper into in a little bit into how we specifically do it, but in general, how do you talk them back into on mode?
Yeah, that's what we want to. I want to spend time with that too.
Yes. Yeah. So this is a very important question. Because all of us as parents, we know there's times when our children are just not in the state that's going to help, that's going to be able to navigate that situation well.
In fact, some parents would probably say that their kids are never in the on state.
Yeah,
rarely,
I hear that.
Rarely in the, especially when they're about 2 or 3 years old.
Oh, yeah. So what I'd say in the book is the worst conditions for my brain to process and navigate whatever I'm dealing with is when I feel alone. The moment I feel alone, that creates the toughest conditions for me to navigate my upset, my feelings, my pain, my emotions, whatever it is. So feeling alone, bad. So I love how the Bible tells us, the Psalms, that even in the valley of the shadow of death, God is there. He is with us. So as parents, we know anytime our child feels alone in their feelings or alone in their mess, whatever it is, or alone in their struggle, those are tough conditions for the child to navigate that. So one of the ways we help children feel seen would be just to validate what they're feeling. So I call validation, we say what we see. So let's say my son didn't do a chore, and I'm mad he didn't do the chore, and we're going to talk about consequences. But first, I see that he's melting down. So what I wouldn't use that as an opportunity to try to teach, because he's in enemy mode. So what I would do is I would validate. I'd say, I see that you're really upset right now. You've got some big feelings here, don't you? So I'm just validating. I'm saying what I see. Helps him feel seen. Now, he's still going to have to do the chore, but right. He's still going to do the chore. But I'm helping him get back online in a sense. There's, okay, you're really upset here. What do you need when you feel this upset? Can I get you a glass of water while you start doing your chores?
Right.
Would you like me to play some music while you do your chores? So it's validate, and then we comfort. And comfort is just what's good in the midst of this hard stuff. So what's good in the midst of this?
And wouldn't you say that a lot of parents, when that happens, start to yell, and they create more aloneness, which is then going to put that kid further. We talk about parents, you create your own culture, in the home. And so what you're talking about is changing that culture, changing that environment your child is in so that it makes them more receptive.
And you said it well. What happens is we tend to turn up the volume. So it's like, okay, you're not listening. Well, I'm going to turn it up so you will listen. And my wife and I often will catch ourselves because our family didn't have some of these skills. Right. So we learned a lot of unhelpful stuff that, we've had to correct, and we still make mistakes. And I always tell parents, look, you're going to mess up, but the key is to repair when you do mess up. Get good at repairing, because you are going to mess it up. But we find that, turning up the volume isn't satisfying. It doesn't actually help the situation. So we help our children feel seen, heard, and understood. They still need to do the chore. And as my children have gotten older, we'll talk about consequences after everything's done. So I don't even talk to them when they're in enemy mode. Like, you know what? You're in enemy mode or I'm in enemy mode. We're not going to talk about this. I'll talk to you after the chore's done, and we'll get relational and have our discussion. Because sometimes we try to talk in that moment or teach. When they're in enemy mode, there's no redemptive value that's going to come up in those conditions. So helping them get relational, they still have to do whatever it is you're trying to help them do. But then afterwards, we would talk about, okay, what we're going to talk about consequences, but I will not care. I will not have conversations with my sons when one of us is in enemy mode. If it's them, I'll just say, buddy, I see you're really upset still. Let's take a few minutes and get relational, and let's try this conversation then. Or if I'm in enemy mode, so daddy is still offline. This isn't going to be satisfying if we have this talk when I'm in enemy mode. Let's come back in a few minutes and have this conversation. And anytime we lose our relational footing, we just pause for a moment. Now, these are skills we've practiced. So this is just kind of a pattern now. When our kids were younger, we would help them get relational again when they were little. So it might be sitting with them when they need a little quiet, just to help them be able to calm down. When children are younger, our words don't quite have the same weight, but our face, our voice, our mannerisms, our body. So the relational brain, the emotional brain is actually nonverbal. Right. So it's your tone, it's your face, it's your gestures, your movements. So it's like you can tell by one glance, usually what someone in your family's feeling, or you can tell by the tone of their voice, right? If it's been a good day or a hard day. And so we learn, if I'm wanting to build joy with my children, I learn to live in my face and show what I'm feeling. Like, Daddy's really glad to see you. I missed you today.
Wow.
And again, this wasn't how I grew up. So my wife and I have had to kind of work in this garden and learn some of these things until they feel more natural. At first, it kind of feels like you're forcing it because these aren't natural skills for a lot of us. But the good news is, with a little bit of practice, this will start to feel natural. And as a parent, our job is just do our best to stay relational, acting like the people God created us to be. Part of that would mean we stay relational with our family. And when we don't, we just get we take care of ourselves to get relational again. I think a lot of us parents, we feel like we have to force it. Mm-hmm. I have to force this because I'm mad and you need to listen. Mm-hmm. They're not going to listen.
A couple of things that really come out there for me. One of them is that parents, we can learn these skills. I mean,
we weren't parented that way doesn't mean,
or even if our personality isn't, like I have become a much more encouraging parent over 20 years.
Yeah.
But it's one little step at a time. You just keep practicing these things. They don't come easy, but they do come. And I think that's so encouraging. The other thing that's really interesting to me, and it just is super helpful, it's super inspiring to me, is that science backs up what God says.
Yes.
That God says relationships are important. God says have joy, that should be your state of being. And then science comes back and says, by the way, we studied the brain and we figured this out. It's like, really? Oh, that's cool. Because that's what God has said all along, that we are made to be in a state of joy. And we are connected with God when we are on, when the switch is on, and that should be our state of being. And another thing we tell parents, I think is so important, is that we tend to think that this irritated mode is just our norm. Yes. But it needs to be this red flag that says, wow. And that's what you're saying in the switch is and you brought a terminology to it, and I want to relate it back to the kids here with a question for you. I'm in off mode. I need to be in on mode, and I need to do something. And you've even said that with your kids, y'all have some code words that you use. Explain. I love that practical way.
Yeah, that was about to say, let's go into some practicals. On
yes.
I love it. It just made me think about when you were saying that it's all about the face. I remember when I had a bunch of little kids, I felt like I frowned all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I did is that every time I walked past a mirror, I would smile at myself, basically to train my face to smile at those little people that were around me, even though I wasn't off mode. I didn't know it was off mode at the time.
Sure.
They were annoying, because they were high maintenance and needy. And all of,
You bet.
And so I would love to go into some practicals, one of the things that you said, and I want to just bring that to attention again, parents, is pay attention to your facial expressions. Your eyes are talking to them. Your tone of voice is talking to them. Your smile is talking to them. A smile goes such a long way. That's so good. But what are some other things? How do we go from enemy mode, which I feel like is so easy to go into, and how do we switch it to joy mode, which I don't know that it's harder necessarily. It just seems a little more out of reach with the circumstances of life.
Yes. And I love your example because, research has showed that if we practice smiling, people's moods get better. So if I actually practice smiling, my mood will improve.
Hey, I like it when my wife smiles at me, okay?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anytime I get that, versus the frown.
Yes.
I'll take it anytime.
Yes. And that's what I love about, what we now learn about how God wired the brain is when infants see joy on a face, it's euphoric. So what that means is they feel the high of all highs. It's euphoric. There's dopamine. It just feels really good. They feel a reward in their nervous system.
Wow.
What that means is I learn when you light up to see me, my brain learns there must be something good about me because your face is now a mirror for me.
Right. Because that mirroring ion or whatever it is.
Yeah. The mirror neurons. Every time someone sees a face light up, that cell tells the brain there must be something good about me because you're glad to be with me. Right. So it's very life-giving for children. It's a very powerful force. But so in the book, we wanted to come up with the language when our sons were younger, of noticing when we kind of go, we call relational circuits RCs. So when RCs are off, how do we navigate that as a family? So we were talking about it one day with my sons, and we had the idea of using code words for, when someone goes RCs off or in enemy mode. We use code words as a gentle reminder to, have a moment, take a breather, and get relational again. And so the way that we came up with those code words were each of our favorite fruit. So, one son was strawberries, one son was blueberries, my wife was peaches, and I was apples. And so anytime you heard, if I'm getting offline, let's say, and it's clear dad's going into enemy mode, I would hear daddy apple pie. And apple is the reminder for me to just take a moment, catch my breath. Let's, get relational again. And sometimes it's just that little pause. Sometimes it's thinking about God's gifts. There's lots of ways we can get relational again. But we were helping one another to recognize, hey, it looks like you're losing your peace. You're losing your relational circuits. Let's get relational. One son is very high energy. So usually when he starts amping up, he's probably going to get in trouble. He's going to do something. So we would say, hey, buddy, strawberry milkshake. And the moment he heard strawberry, he would stop and he'd take a breather. And there were times I would forget about our code words, and I would just tell him, hey, buddy, it looks like you need a breather. You're getting hyper, blah, blah, blah. Like I would sit there and talk to him, and he wouldn't do anything. He'd just kind of look at me. But my wife would hear it, and she'd say, Matthew, strawberry. It was amazing. It was like Pavlov's dog. We all knew
right there. Exactly.
Hearing the cue was a very gentle reminder. Or if they heard my wife and I slipping in enemy mode in a conversation, they could say, mommy and daddy, peaches and apples. It's pretty humbling when your children can remind you, like, hey, you're slipping here. Let's get relational again. So it helps for families to have a language, as well as learn what helps get people into relational mode. One son, humor helps him. So if we're silly, humor helps him start laughing, and he immediately gets relational again. Humor doesn't work with my other son. It would keep him in enemy mode. He would just get mad.
Right.
So good to know.
So
I love that.
Yeah.
The secret code. I mean, all kids love a secret code.
Yeah.
And then also to be able to basically to call mom and dad out,
Yes.
in a respectful, honoring way. But still,
Yes.
I think so many times kids don't feel like they have the power, if you will, to switch mom and dad. And our kids don't want us in the off mode. They don't want us non-relational.
They don't like it.
They want us in our sweet spot, our best selves
They do.
all the time. And so with that, you've literally equipped your kids to speak into your life without it being threatening, because so many parents. That's good.
And we don't want that for ourselves either.
Yeah.
We don't want to be grouches.
Right.
Gentle reminder.
But it happens.
Yeah.
But we don't want to be told we're being grouchy.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. We don't like it.
That's what I was wondering. Did you ever get when they said that, hey, Dad, apple pie? Like, hey, dude, I'll apple your pie. All of a sudden. Does that word ever go? Does it never backfire, I guess?
It does. It's funny because my wife would often say, if Jen was on, here's what she would say, like, there's times where she's in enemy mode and she doesn't want to get relational.
Amen, sister. I love you, Jen. I don't even know you.
Yeah. She's like, honey, I don't care that my relational circuits are off. So that's where
I want you to all leave me alone.
Oh, yeah. I recognize, okay, I'm not going to, so I've tried suggesting it. Honey, I'll talk to you when you get your relational circuits back on. Oh, no, that does not work. No way. So I might say, honey, why don't we take a female? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've learned the hard way. So we just might say, honey, why don't we take a moment to catch our breath and let's talk in a few minutes. And that usually we just need a moment. We're getting upset, because we both have done this long enough to know we don't like the roadkill that happens when we're in enemy mode. Like, we don't like how our family feels when one of us is in enemy mode. So the words, the reminders are very gentle. And it does, as you said, it helps our children have this language. So now they notice, even interacting with their friends, they know friends don't know what relational circuits are, but they know, okay, someone's in enemy mode. Here's what's going to help. Here's what's not going to help. So it's like, as we practice this as a family, it's also preparing them to interact with the world. How do we navigate the world? And the best thing we can do is for us to stay in relational mode. So even if everybody's in enemy mode around me, the best thing for me is to get, put on the oxygen mask, as they tell us on airplanes, put the oxygen mask on when there's turbulence. We get relational. That helps us navigate.
And I love that. One of the things we tell our parents all the time is the best thing you can do for your family is to present them the healthiest version of you.